First round.
Mm-hmm.
Welcome into WagerTalk TV. I am Drew Martin, joined by Rob Vino and Tony Mejia of WagerTalk.com. Guys, we're talking NFL playoffs here. Cincinnati Bengals at the Tennessee Titans. Rob, throw it over to you. Interested in your opinion here as we're seeing -3.5 pretty much at all the sports books as we're talking midweek, 47 being the total. What are you liking Bengals and Titans on Saturday, Robbie?
Yeah, I like the Titans side, Drew. I think where I started this was, I think, a question that we always ask on these bye week teams, right? Does that bye week team help the team out, or does it create rust? And I think the answer is different in every single situation. But in this one, my opinion is it helps Tennessee. It helps them greatly. It's an extra week to get healthier, more cohesive, especially on the offensive side of the ball, right? Because that's where all the injuries and all the returnees are coming from on that side. Obviously, the most talked about is Derrick Henry. Donta Foreman has done a great job running the football in his absence, as has Dontrell Hilliard. So if Henry needs a spell in this game on the sidelines, certainly they can come in with a 2 and 3 back that can do the job. I think what needs to be a little more talked about is the left side of their offensive line, Roger Saffold and Taylor Lewan, who just came back together last week and played in that number 1 seed clinching game against Houston. Having those two guys back on the left side is huge, and now it's 3 weeks. Certainly their health near 100%, or as close as you can get at this time of year. It's big for the Tennessee Titans, as well as the receiving core. A.J. Brown and Julio Jones have played so little together on the field so far this year. To have them both back and to have them able to work the last, 4 or 5 weeks together, pretty big deal. And in the meantime, they found a third piece in Nick Westbrook-Akine. Of course, Westbrook only had one last name when he was at Indiana, but he was a star wide receiver for IU. He's made some critical catches for Tennessee. So they have 3 legitimate threats on the perimeter right now. And I think that the extra prep time probably helps Tennessee, right? They didn't exactly know who their opponent was going to be before the final result of last game, but Mike Vrabel and staff obviously were into both game plans the week that, Cincinnati and the Raiders were preparing for themselves. So I think the extra time to prep here helps the Titans. These guys knew who was going to be on the field for this game. I think they should come in fresh and well prepared. Couple of key matchups here that I think don't go the Bengals' way. Bengals pass protection and their run offense against the Titans pass rush and the run defense. If there's one most improved thing on the Titans this year, and it was god awful for the last 3 years or so, is the fact that they have the ability to get to a quarterback now. The addition of Bud Dupree, Harold Landry's been great. Mississippi State kid Jeffrey Simmons up the middle has been really good as well. And Joe Burrow gets hit as the Bengals pass protection allowed 55 sacks this year, 3rd worst in the NFL. Joe Burrow seemingly always getting hit. So I think that matchup could be favorable to Tennessee. I think that the Bengals, the last 7 weeks, let me run this number by you guys. The last 7 games, and I know Joe Mixon's a big name and a hot name. Fantasy people want to have him on their roster every week. But the last 7 games of the season, Cincinnati's rush average per game, less than 85 yards a game, 3.7 a carry. And I watched again last week. And they just don't open up any holes for Joe Mixon anymore. And he runs into 3 yards and a pile up, 4 yards and a pile up. It's better to get him the ball through the air than it is to try and run him. Tennessee's got a very good run defense. 3 times all season long did they allow over 90 yards rushing to a team. Pretty good run defense. So this could be all on Joe Burrow's shoulders. I don't think that bodes well on the road. As great as he is and as good as Chase and the receiving core is, Higgins and company, I don't think that bodes well for them. The Bengals' defensive line is a little bit banged up here. It looks like they'll probably all go, except for one. But against the Titans' run game, you have to wonder if they're going to have to sell out, guys. 8 in the box to stop Derrick Henry with a banged-up defensive line is not a good way to go. Opens up big play opportunities for Brown and Jones and Westbrook-Akine. So I think there's a lot of matchups here that just scream Tennessee. So I'll probably be on that side, Tennessee -3.5.
Looking towards Tennessee minus 3.5. I like it, Robbie. Good breakdown. Tony, coming to you next. It's something we've seen in the market here, both in the Tennessee Cincinnati game and also in Green Bay San Francisco. The betting market's liking the team off of a bye, of course, that being the number one seed. And interestingly enough, the NFL putting them both on the Saturday games, helping the higher seeded team, it seems. And sure enough, I got a stat for you guys from our friend Mark Lawrence. 134. That's 100 wins and 34 losses straight up in the divisional round for the team off of a bye since 1988. Also 71 in 59 against the spread. So it speaks to kind of long term here, Tony, of the team off of the bye, the one seed this season, being very good team to bet on. How much does that factor in? And hey, what are you thinking here, Cincinnati and Tennessee, Tony?
Yeah, I mean, certainly it helps when you have an extra week of rest. And the Titans took the second half off against Houston. So they got a little extra because they almost blew that game up 21-0 at the break. But look, the key is obviously that it allowed Derrick Henry an additional week to heal. He spoke to the media for the first time on Wednesday, which is when we're taping this preview, and said we'll see how the rest of the week goes in terms of his availability, but he'll be out there. From what we've seen on highlights of him, he looks sharp running it out there. It's going to be interesting to see because I think to Rob's point, the Tennessee is going to put this on Joe Burrow's shoulders. Tennessee's second fewest rushing yards allowed. You mentioned Jeffrey Autry, his partner. They're really stout in stopping the run. Harold Landry with 12 sacks on the edge. So that Tennessee defensive line doesn't get enough play, but really has a huge strength. A Titans team that things together in other ways once Derrick Henry went down and now welcomes him back. Joe Burrow is 1-0 against the Titans. They never trailed against Tennessee in the only meeting back in November 1st of 2020. Bengals won 31-20. How much can we take from that game? Well, the fact is Jamar Chase wasn't involved there, and the leading receiver in that game for the Bengals wasn't either Higgins or Tyler Tate. So you put Chase in there and plug him in, and this potentially ends up being a shootout if Joe Burrow can find a rhythm against that defensive line. And again, that hinges on a lot on how his offensive line is protecting him. Whether they can move the needle a little bit first and second down. So from that standpoint, Joe Mixon is key there. And I think it's bode well for Cincinnati that it's going to be about 40 degrees. There will probably be no winds to really speak of, and that's huge considering the weather in Nashville has been downright dreadful of late, snowstorms and whatnot. So I think Cincinnati catches a break there, especially with the Titans would have minded if we see a windier day or if there was a little bit of snowfall. Huge opportunity for Tennessee here because if they get by Cincinnati, then they welcome in the Chiefs or Bills off of their huge matchup. And really can impose their will with a home field advantage and really sneak in, considering that I think this team is fresher based on all the injuries that they've dealt with. The fact that Taylor Lewan is in and out of the lineup early in the season and then really gets his rhythm in there and now gets his tag team partner next to him. So they can build up a rhythm, but you got to get past this game. And that line's a little scary. Open get you. Will Cincinnati be able to orchestrate a backdoor cover late? I think the Titans win this game, but I do think it's going to be a tight one that comes down to the final drive. So, yeah, I'm probably not going to take the points with Cincinnati, but I'm not necessarily laying them with Tennessee. I'm looking at this total, though. I think we do see a situation where Joe Burrow has to rescue Cincinnati, and the fact that the weather is expected to be pleasant lends itself to potentially a shootout, despite the fact that both defenses are pretty solid. I just like both offenses here. The fact that you can look at A.J. Brown to make plays in the passing game. Now Julio Jones is healthy, and they have Derrick Henry back to command attention. And on the Cincinnati side, obviously Tennessee will have to deal with all of those receivers, even though they can't stop the run. So that's my lean here. I like the over in Tennessee and the Cincinnati Bengals.
He's Tony Mejia. We heard from Rob Vino as well. Check them both out, WagerTalk.com. Guys, when you're doing so, also remember Mondays is $9 Mondays. All plays from all handicappers discounted to just $9. Check it out, WagerTalk.com.